Episode number 13 of Have a Tisue podcast is with the new Command Chief of Kunsan Air Base, Wolf Chief number 24, Chief Master Sergeant Thomas Schaefer. Chief Schaefer recently arrived to Kunsan Air Base from Nellis Air Force Base. Chief prioritizes developing airmen, and this line of effort provided me with an opportunity to speak to him yesterday to discuss the Airpower Leadership Academy. At the end of the meeting, I told him I leave Korea in a week, and if he has time for a podcast, I would love to host him. He checked his calendar and said, "What about tomorrow?" Today, Chief Schaefer and I attended the Operations Support Squadron Change of Command and met up afterwards for this podcast. I asked him why he joined the Air Force after graduating with a Criminal Sociology degree from the University of Arizona, and I asked what he did for almost 2 years prior to enlisting. He shares a moment from 23 years ago when he was about 23 years old. His manager offered him a promotion at the grocery store he was working at. Instead of accepting the manager's offer, he decided right then in that moment that he wanted to join the military, and he told his manager he had to resign. He talks about his 4 kids and the support of his wife, Chief Master Sergeant Diane Schaefer, gave him when he was offered this position to be the command chief. This is his second assignment with Kunsan's current wing commander, Colonel John Gallemore. We talk about what makes a good team and a working relationship. I asked him what things, if any, he would change within the Air Force, and he had some really good suggestions that I could get behind. Toward the end, we talk about his top mentors throughout his career. He lists people off, and we make an observation as to what all 4 of his mentors had in common. So I've got Chief Master Sergeant Schaefer. He's the new Wolf Chief here at Kunsan Air Base, and we just left the change of command for the Wizard, Colonel Beck, and you found time to do this with me, and then you've got another appointment right after this. So the first thing I want to ask you, and I'll let you introduce yourself after, is just how do you actually enjoy like that really busy life and busy schedule?
First of all, thank you for asking me to come do this. It's kind of flattering to be asked to give my perspective. As far as a busy schedule type of things go, it has its pros and its cons. I like it because it's good to be busy. It keeps you energized. It focuses you, and it if you, that old adage, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And it's kind of like goes along those lines. It also has its drawbacks. When you're busy, we tell everyone take care of yourself. Right, that's one of the resiliency pillars. But it's the first thing to go. Yep. It's the first thing to go when you're busy because you're going to prioritize mission and work and people, especially if people are your mission and work, ahead of you. And we might get into that more later, but I mean that is a hallmark of a good leader. Yeah, self-sacrifice and putting somebody, others, the people they're leading, ahead of them. Yeah, but when it gets crucial, my well-being, I don't let it go into the ditch or anything, but yeah, it's the busy lifestyle can be challenging to manage, not exhausting to manage, but challenging to manage. But I do enjoy it. Yeah.
I should let you introduce yourself first, and I made that mistake because now you just said so many interesting things and avenues I want to go down. But if you would introduce yourself.
Yep. As you mentioned, Chief Master Thomas Schaefer. My call sign here is Wolf Chief, but my combat call sign is Kraken. I am married to Diane Schaefer. She's a Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force as well. We have 4 children. 3 of them are stepkids, and 1 is my 2-year-old son. So we got married. I went from being a single man for many years, and met Diane. We got married. I inherited 3 kids, and we had a kid right off the bat. So I went from single with no kids to married and an instant family almost of 4 kids. That's
really good. You got to marry into. I'm sure you wanted a family at that point, so you got to marry into one. She already had the kids for you. Yeah, that's awesome.
That was the right time for me. I was ready. I was mature enough for it. My deployment times, my heavy deployment times were kind of behind me. I was financially more prepared, and I actually wanted kids, and I met the right person and all that. And then of course, Diana's doing the lion's share of the lifting right now. She's back home taking care of all of those kids, plus being a squadron superintendent. Wow. Plus taking care of my Alzheimer's 83-year-old mother, my mother. So I put that burden on her. She's crushing it.
Sounds like an awesome person to be able to handle all that and run a squadron.
Yep.
Yeah. So many avenues we went down. One of the things you said, taking care of people, is really important. Putting people first. Servant leadership is what that definition is from the reading I've done.
Right.
And that's something they don't ever teach at PME in the Air Force yet. I think they're starting to come around to. But that idea, is that what you would consider one of your styles of leadership?
I mean, absolutely. Most people know, I think, that the word, as far as enlisted leaders go, the word sergeant means to serve. Mm-hmm. The root Latin word of it means to serve. It literally is what that is. And the idea is anyone in that NCO role, senior NCO role, is a servant leader, just by the definition of their rank and position. We can get into arguments about what the difference between commissioned leadership and non-commissioned leadership is as far as what the Air Force expects out of you, but both of them include taking care of people.
Yeah.
For me in particular, what I try to tell people is when you come in the Air Force, your focus, as it should be, is on your job, learning your job, micro-focus on that, crushing it, become good at that. Then you start to migrate to, you're good at your job now, so maybe you can train others at the job. Right there, your focus is starting to shift from you to others.
Yeah.
That's the first taste of it. Before you were helping take care of your peers, but it was mainly you taking care of you.
Yeah.
Now you're focusing on others, and that just expands from there on up until one day you find my job is no longer to be a cop, to be a medic, to be a JTAC, to be a services person. Mm-hmm. My job is now to take care of the people who are doing those things. And that's literally your job, to take care of people. And that's where I'm at right now and have been for quite a while.
Yeah. I mean, I guess being a command chief, that is your job, is mostly, I assume, people-oriented, but still following what Wolf Colonel Gallemore
absolutely
wants. You worked with him back at Nellis?
I did. The story on that was I got hired by Colonel Malero, the 57th Ops Group commander at the time, to be the superintendent because I'm a TAC-P by trade, and they were standing up the first ever TAC-P formal training unit. I have history of having stood up the first ever enlisted weapons officer course at the weapons school, the JTAC WIC, myself and a handful of others. Right now, there's another command chief out there, TAC-P Adam Veazey. He's the command chief over at 2nd Air Force. He was one of the initial cadre with me when we stood that up together, among others. And because of that experience, they hired me to be the OG chief, so we can facilitate the stand-up to TAC-P formal training unit, as well as a number of other things. That really expanded my aperture because that was actually the first time I've been, other than the weapons school, stationed on an Air Force base. Oh, wow. Kunsan's my second Air Force base. Nellis twice and Kunsan once. Other than that, I've been on Army posts. So it was a windfall position for me. Really developed me, and I loved it. And halfway through, Colonel Malero retires. 57th Wing decides to merge what existed at the 57th Aggressors or Adversary Tactics Group, which was the group that runs all the adversary surface-to-air guys, the adversary aggressor squadrons, the F-16s that fly like bad guys, the ones that pretend to be the bad guys, at all the red flags and the weapons school stuff. That was the Adversary Tactics Group, but it was small. They decided to merge that with the OG, and it became a large, a 10-squadron wide OG. Yeah, OG. It's a huge OG with a mission that goes from one end of the spectrum to the other. And I stayed on as the superintendent, and Colonel Gallemore, who was the Adversary Tactics Group commander, took over as the entire OG commander. Okay. And that's where I met him. We clicked just like that. He got picked up for a wing command. He's like, what do you think about being a command chief? And I'm like, well, I'm not on the command chief list, so it doesn't matter. Then I came out on the command chief list, and he said, do you think you'd want to go to Korea? I go, I would love to go to Kunsan, but my wife will never go for it. Yeah. And so I went over and I asked her, I go, what do you think about me doing command chief gig at Kunsan? She goes, oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like she was totally on board. She was here at Kunsan as a tech sergeant. Okay. She was in the comm squadron. She's comm by trade. And she was actually executive comm for the Wolf at the time, which was Colonel Rand, who later on became General Rand. I don't know if any 4-star general, a MAGCOM commander. So, so she has a lot of history with the Wolfpack.
Yeah. That's cool that she was here too and just let you go, that she was that supportive of it. So what I think is interesting is, so like the teamwork and relationship you have with current Wolf, Colonel Gallemore, how do you how does that happen? Like, they're having a relationship that good or teamwork that good to where you're willing to follow the guy to Kunsan and ask your wife that difficult question. What do you think is special about that relationship?
It all depends on your individual human bond with that other person. It's really a human relationship. Mm-hmm. It's not merely, they know how to run a group or a wing or whatever, I'd like to be part of that. It's, I am with the person every day. I see what they're really like. And Colonel Gallemore, he loves human beings, or he loves the development of human beings and the inner working with a team of humans every bit as much as I do and most of us do. And I really saw his patriotism, his dedication to the airmen, and I want to be on that team. It made me, if I was given the opportunity to continue that with him, I wanted to, without a doubt, without hesitation. I think it happens because you can be a good team member with somebody else that you don't necessarily click with, but when you click with somebody, Colonel Gallemore is somebody that I would click with in any situation. I've been able to work with many leaders who I admire and worked well with, very few of which I would follow anywhere. Colonel Gallemore is one of the ones I'd follow anywhere.
That's awesome. It's good to have him as our new Wolf.
Yeah.
So something I read your bio, and something I thought was really interesting is you had graduated college before you joined.
Right.
So you graduated with a degree in Criminal Sociology from University of Arizona, and then you decided, I guess a year and a half later or so, I'm going to go enlist and be a TACP.
Right. So the way that happened is my entire life, I call the military kind of my family business. Everyone going, if you want to go all the way back, my mother is a Swiss immigrant, and my father is a child of German immigrants. So pre-World War I is as far back as my family lineage goes in America. However, we do have a relative who was here at the founding of America. Unfortunately, he was on the other side. He was a Hessian mercenary hired by the English to fight the Americans.
Okay.
I make the joke that I can trace my lineage out all the way back to the beginning. It just is the wrong side. But no one came over after that, and he went back after the war was lost, and then my father's family immigrated. So my father's father, who was an immigrant, fought in World War I on the American side, and my father and all his brothers fought in World War II. One of his brothers was a bomber pilot, stayed in the Air Force, and retired a colonel. He also fought in Korea. The other brother didn't make it post-war because of PTSD and all that kind of stuff. And my sister did a stint in the Navy. I have a nephew who's in the Marine Corps. My stepson is in the Navy. So it's something in our blood. I always wanted to do it. My dad told me, he was enlisted in the Army, and he told me, hey, don't join the Army, is what he said. Just join the Air Force. It'll be, it's just be better on you. And he goes, I suggest you try to go officer. So I was in Air Force Junior ROTC in high school, did very well in that, did well in high school, went off to college. I applied for the Air Force Academy, got a nomination, but not the appointment. So I got a scholarship to a few universities, and I chose University of Arizona. My first year in the ROTC program at University of Arizona, I was dismayed with the cadre at the detachment there. I thought that the way there was stuff going on in there, and I thought that was a reflection of what it would be like to be an officer in the Air Force, since that's my only direct experience with them at the time. So I quit. I quit ROTC, and I just finished college on my own. I dumped the scholarship, and I just decided to go my own route.
At that point, you weren't going to do military?
No, I wasn't going to do military. But it was always in the back of my mind as a thing, right? I felt the requirement to serve my country through the military. That's always been in my heart. So then I finish I get out. I'm wandering around due to personal decisions. I end up in places like South Dakota. I end up doing odd jobs, I was a laborer on a paleontology dig. I ended up being in
what that is.
Yeah, digging dinosaur bones up. I was a laborer. I mean, I was just like crushing rock and shoveling stuff and carrying stuff. I worked on under the table construction jobs, whatever. And then I landed a couple of part-time management gigs, one at a fast food restaurant and one at a supermarket. The supermarket gig turned out to go well. I was promoted to assistant manager full-time. And then one day, the general manager of the store, I don't know if you know this, but large supermarket general managers, they make decent money. It's actually like an upper level management job. Well, he got picked up to be the regional manager of the supermarket chain, which is a 6-figure job. And he's going to move on. And he brought me in his office and he said, I'm very young at this point.
Yeah, 21, maybe 22.
Yeah, exactly. 22, approaching 23. And he offered me the store manager job. And at that age, it was a ton of money, job security. Anyone who's a supermarket manager is being looked at for possible promotion to even more stuff. But what flat in that time they offered, which is a great honor for him to offer that to me, right? All of a sudden, my future life flashed before my eyes of being a supermarket executive, which is not anything I ever dreamt of for myself or wanted. And the whole military thing flashed in front of my eyes. And I said, thank you so much for the offer, but I need to quit. And I quit. So he took me in to promote me, and I quit. and he's like, he was stunned. I explained why, and he goes, "Well, I understand." He says, "This sounds like a rash decision."
Yeah,
but, and it was, but it was a rash decision based on my entire past life. And I decided. I walked out, and the next day I was at the recruiter's office, and I said, "I got to join the military." I went to the Air Force first because my dad told me to, and I tend to listen to my dad, and then
it's usually good.
Yeah,
good thing to do.
It's usually good. And I said, "Hey, I want a ground combat job. I don't know if the Air Force has any of that, but my dad talked about forward air controlling in the Army. That's something I'm interested in doing." And I've joined TACP and never looked back.
Yeah, so that was about 23, 24 years ago when you told that store manager that?
Yeah, 23 years ago.
Do you ever think about, like, man, what if I just didn't have the balls at that moment and just did it?
Yeah, I could potentially be like a
what
VP,
would you be right now?
A supermarket VP, and in some city, like behind a desk, talking about tomato inventories and stuff, which is absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? It's changed our way of life having supermarkets and stuff, but just not for me.
Yeah, complete different trajectories almost of like that kind of a person and what you ended up doing. I think that's really interesting. I often like to think about that. It's like if I didn't, like I just happened to walk out of a food line and I was like, I want a Red Bull. So I went back in the store, and when I came out, there was a recruiter standing there smoking a cigarette. And if I didn't go back for that Red Bull, I wouldn't be here right now. It's just so crazy how and in that moment when you were like, no, I'm quitting. Yeah. And here you are. Yeah. Would have never met Diana, 3 Step Kids.
You're absolutely correct. I never would have met them. I never would have had the experiences and visited the countries I visited.
Yep. That's something cool to talk about. I know you were TACP and you've worked with the Army a lot. So you joined the Air Force and still worked with the Army. I bet your dad probably liked that. What are some like cool, besides setting up that TACP program out in Nellis, what are some other cool things, missions or operations you've been a part of?
Well, I've been part of every combat operation since, 1997 to present. That is out there because TACP are aligned with combat arms units in the Army, I can boast, I don't tend to boast, but this is something I'm proud of, is that I have supported in combat every combat arms type of unit that the Army has, from Rangers, Green Berets, to air assault, airborne, infantry, armor, light infantry, mechanized infantry, on and on. I've had, as well as the Marine Division, and the 1st MARDIV, and some international forces like Australians and British, New Zealanders, and not the Ukrainians, the Estonians.
Okay.
Estonians, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, working with foreign. I just came from Spangalum, and I didn't really work with many foreign militaries until I got here with the ROCAF.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do really enjoy working with foreign military people, and I could imagine being there, working with them. That was your first base too, wasn't it? Germany?
Germany was my first duty assignment, which was amazing. This is another thing that leads down to one of the leadership things is perspective. Mm-hmm. To me, that's probably the most important thing you can have as a human being is a perspective. People with appropriate perspective tend to be more resilient people in my experience because you're able to put into perspective your current situation.
Yep.
So, oh my gosh, I'm sleeping in the mud in a hailstorm and I've got dysentery and I don't know what's next. And things like thinking about someone in the Hanoi Hilton for 9 years.
Yeah. And
somebody who's a paraplegic making it through life, right? Just like, hey, this can be worse. I can do this. So everyone said in our career field, there's a unit called the ASOC. It's a high-level command and control unit that TACPs will go to, but no one wants to go to it because it's not frontline operational. You want to go to a frontline unit, right? So right out of the gate, everyone's gung-ho from tech school, and I get the ASOC in Germany, and they're like, oh, you get the ASOC, sucks to be you. And I'm like, I'm going to the center of Germany. The ASOC was located in Mannheim, which is the center of Germany. So my perspective was, I'm going to a great location. Then I get there, I'm like, yeah, it's not the front line, but I am part of the largest command and control node for joint fires integration. So I got to see the entire battlefield, what was going on. And I learned that right from the beginning, how all of it meshes together. None of my peers who went to the frontline units know what's going on up there. All they know is their little soda straw in their unit, right? So the next unit I go to, which is a frontline unit, I'm like, I know the why behind everything that's happening. And I start immediately like working up to instructor stuff because I had a much bigger basis from the get-go than a lot of my peers because I got fortunate enough to get that unit.
Yeah, that is a cool idea. And perspective and other ideas of like resiliency and even like simple things like confidence. I feel like people think that just comes naturally to a lot of people, but it takes some kind of learning and being taught that. How do you think you like learned perspective while you're sitting in the mud?
Well, in the beginning, because perspective is built by experience. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to have either learned perspective or experienced perspective, right? Makes sense. So a lot of it in the beginning is learned. What you listen to your parents, listen to what they went through. My dad was in World War II. He went through he grew up during the Depression. He had me really late in life, so he jumped. His first combat was jumping into Operation Market Garden in Holland.
Okay.
And I bounced a lot of stuff off of what he taught me on. He grew up poor in the Depression. Lots of people were poor. Jobs weren't to be had. When the same with the war, their version of war in World War II, much different than our version of war, what was available to us. You think about my most recent deployment, the most feared thing is if the Wi-Fi went out, right? In your forward location, the fact that you have Wi-Fi, people were taking college classes in the mud. Like, that's amazing to me. My dad's biggest concern was, are they going to have hot food or are they going to have to find food? Mm-hmm. Like, is the field kitchen going to be able to be opened, right? Because they're under counter fire and all this other stuff, right? They didn't know if they'd get food. And one of the things he said was when I joined the military, because he had his perspective, but he didn't know modern military.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, hey, just be careful when they bring the hot food. And I said, what do you mean out in the field? When they bring the hot food, that means the next day is going to be a bad day. Because they only bring the hot food to get you ready because it's going to be bad the next day.
I wonder if that's true. It's just like something they kind of
That's what he said. Every time they had hot food, there was a big battle the next day.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because being air traffic control, we have a pretty good schedule. We can't work more than 10 hours. And I didn't really appreciate it until I volunteered to do TCN duty in Afghanistan and working 6 days on, 12-hour shifts, 1 day off. And it not as bad as sleeping in the mud every night, but it was something that I realized, like, when I go back to my job, like I'm not going to complain anymore.
Right.
Like so I had perspective definitely does come with experience. So that's how I was when I was young. I definitely was a complainer, like I guess most of us can be. How were you as a younger airman and young staff sergeant?
And I don't like the word complaining.
Mm-hmm.
Complaining implies that you don't have a valid basis for the thing you're saying.
Okay.
Because there's a difference between complaining and bringing up something that needs to be fixed or could be fixed, right? So it's one thing, my perspective helps me go, hey, this is subpar. This situation is subpar. I can live through it. I will handle it. You can keep giving me this subpar situation and I'll be fine. But I would like to improve it, right? And the complaining piece, or the piece that a lot of leaders can say is complaining, is that piece of I would like to improve it. So I always approached it. My dad was a big, don't complain. Bring up a situation and bring a solution with it. So I always try to approach it with a question like, hey, I noticed this is this way. Why is that way? Because I wanted to understand it first. Because maybe it's subpar, but there's a hard and fast reason why it has to be that way. Then I was able to formulate a more cogent possible solution and bring up my concern, right? You can present that in different ways, but usually I don't like to look at what people bring up to me as a complaint. I would not categorize anything as a complaint. If it is a complaint, if we categorize something as a complaint, there probably are a few things, but I would say they're minimal, because it's just like, why aren't there 8 pepperonis on the slices of pizza in the pizza shop instead of 5 pepperoni slices, right? Okay, that's kind of a complaint. Yeah. But I think complaining probably is more of what happens when you're a child, and actually raising concerns. And the way you raise the concerns might come off as complaining, but it's still a concern.
That's what I was definitely doing. Yeah. If you're someone complaining about a difference of 3 pepperonis on a pizza, you're an asshole.
And most of the time it is perspective, because at the lower levels, I didn't know why things were that way. And I'd be like, man, this is terrible. Why are we doing this? And then lo and behold, one day I found out why. I'm like, oh, there's actually a reason. Sometimes it's a good reason. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a middle of the road reason. Yeah. And sometimes it's not a good reason.
Yeah, I like that you can realize that. Yeah. Definitely it's not always the right reason. So you had that perspective even as a young staff sergeant airman?
I did, because my dad was really big on that. And again, I think I benefited from having a father who was 50 when I was born.
Okay.
So he was there was a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
Even though he was an old man and he could be crotchety, there was a lot of wisdom that went way back, further back than my peers' parents did. That he and I, we had even as a teenager, we had long discussions about life and interacting with people and stuff like that.
That is cool as a teenager to have those kind of discussions. And at that point, he's in the 60s. Yeah, that is cool. So you had a degree and you enlisted, and you never considered commissioning?
No. Later in my career, I thought about it for about half a second, but when I came in, you couldn't do my job as an officer, so I didn't even think about it.
Special tactics officer?
Well, you could do combat control as an officer, and I believe pararescue had started their rescue officer. They may not have started that yet.
Okay.
So special tactics had officers first, then pararescue, and then TACP did not have officers until I think I was sewing on senior master sergeant when we had our first TACP officers. So I didn't want to get out of this job, so being an officer wasn't an option. And I'll be honest with you, by the time I got to my tech sergeant rank, I wouldn't have wanted to, because the way I interact with airmen as an enlisted person, it's not the same as in my opinion, as when you interact with airmen as an officer.
I agree. I feel like some of the officers, when I know they're prior enlisted, it's like a segue. Mm-hmm. But I get overall, it is very different.
Yeah, there are different roles, and the opportunities are not the same.
Yep. Yeah. Is there any other differences you can think?
Yes. I mean, the commission corps is charged with leading organizationally, right? We're charged more with leading personally, like leading individually, where we get, especially below my rank, like at the master sergeant and below ranks, you are in individual human beings' lives.
Yeah.
I'm not any longer, except when my powers can be invoked to help somebody.
Yeah.
But I do get an individual interaction with the superintendents and other senior NCOs and airmen on certain levels, but not into the weeds with them like their supervisors do.
Yeah.
That is probably the most fulfilling part of any leader's life, is when you are dialed in as a team, and when someone walks in the door and you can go, Johnson, what's up?
Yeah.
Johnson's not being Johnson today. You know that you're in the right place because you're dialed into that person's humanity. I can do that with the people who are in my front office and stuff that I see every day, but I can't do that with most people on base, right? I just don't have that kind of interaction with everybody.
It's one really cool thing to have that relationship with someone and pick out when they're not doing right. And it's something really satisfying doing that and being able to help someone get through things, or even just getting through work tasks. There's something so satisfying about that I'm sure there's research about it, but I've never really like in-depthly thought about like why does it feel so good to help someone out through things?
Yeah, I think that would be interesting to find that research on it. I feel like it ties to that piece of you that wants to leave a legacy. You know that every human being you connect with, that human being is going to go on. You just altered their existence just slightly. So they may go on and do something they never were going to do because of that interaction with you. And maybe you helped them get to somewhere they want to be. And maybe they help somebody else. So potentially that ripple effect can be who knows how many people. Yeah.
That is good. So you've been in this seat, Wolf Chief, is this your second week?
May 24th is when I landed.
Okay.
In the seat, the change of command was the 2nd of June.
Yep. So
that's when I officially was.
2 weeks yesterday.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks in, what are you hoping to get changed or to do while you have 50 more weeks left?
Well, the first thing I learned in leadership, when you take a leadership role on, you don't change anything in the beginning, right? Because you got to assess it first.
Yeah.
You might not want to change it. It might be perfect, or it might be great, or it might just need tweaking. So you got to assess. I recently put out my Wolf Chief priorities on paper after I had a chance to, number one, assess my predecessor's priorities and the Wolf 660's priorities, and then wait for my boss to develop his commander's intent and expectations, because my priorities are based off of what he wants to do with the wing, and then also slight tweaks to. It's all focused around. You can call it's wolf pack development. I have 4 lines of effort in my priorities, like developing the pack, care for the pack. All of those are out there. I've passed them to all the superintendents to filter down and digest them and present them to the airmen, because I don't want to just shotgun blast it out to every single airman and have them go, what is this piece of paper? And I don't get it.
Yeah, we definitely did. Chief Clark sent that out. I did see developing the pack was on there, and as a big fan of Airpower Leadership Academy, and I got excited to see that on there. Chief Woods was also a big supporter of that program and got it set up here, along with Tashida. So yeah, that was really cool to see, like, that's important to you. I know when I got to speak to you a little bit in your office yesterday, there's 2 big things I took away. Was like how you were talking about how you just really care about people, and if you don't mind, like, are caring, if you don't mind, like, sharing that.
Yeah, I think if you want to, we tend to, as humans, to want to simplify things, right? Simplify complex problems so we can wrap our mind around it. Like, if you want to boil my mantra down to one thing, it's caring.
Okay.
Everything can be linked and spiderweb back to caring. So I am only here because a multitude of humans cared about my outcome.
Yep.
My parents made me, literally, and then developed me they provided me with the tools to be a good citizen, to want to serve their country, they educated me, they had me educated, all of these things to build good values and all these things. That gave me my base. That initial base helped me to select my friends properly, right? We've probably all known somebody who seems to have no filter for their friend selection, and that might sound a little discriminatory, like friend selection. Well, you take whatever human beings come your way.
Yeah.
If we think about that for a minute, do you want to be friends with someone who's a drug dealer?
Probably not.
Probably not, is my guess. Most of the time, no. So there is some friend selection going on in there, and that's based on your values and everything brought up. Like, oh, that person's not, that person's a drug dealer, or that person's interested in, I don't know, some nefarious stuff, right? I don't want to be associated with that because I could potentially not be involved in their stuff and still be their friend. And I've seen this happen to people, but then I end up being guilty by association when something happens and I'm nearby, and it just causes my path to deviate in a direction I don't want it to deviate to. My parents built that into me. And then, of course, a core of teachers and coaches who along the way saw something in me and wanted to put a little extra energy in me to make me either better at a sport. Every coach you ever had, every teacher has taught you something about leadership. When those talents are nurtured in you and then you start to expose those talents, other people see it and then they grab onto you. And it almost is a cascade effect. And as you age and become an adult, then that translates into some networking, right? People in positions who see that in you talk about you. Mm-hmm. Hey, this was the best flight chief I've ever worked with. Hey, that guy just came across my radar. Didn't you say you? Yeah, I did. What was he like? He was like this. And you get a glowing review, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden and that's how it works. I mean, they read your record and you make the small list, and then they start talking to each other, and they're like, that's the person you want. They're perfect for you. And that's a lot of the times how you get hired for certain things in the world, not just the military. Yep. The military is a little bit different with, because sometimes nobody knows you when they're going off your records. Yeah. But it still matters. If you don't know, like the smaller the pool gets at the top, the more everybody knows about you, right? Yeah. So it does. You need to care. People cared about me, and the same thing is, I want somewhere on this in our yard right here, potentially the next chief master in the Air Force is walking around, or the next chief of staff of the Air Force. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but there have been a couple chiefs of staffs who were wolves.
There have been, yes. The current one might have even been number 50, I think.
Yeah. So that's because people cared. Mm-hmm. Said that, let's put that guy as the wolf, and then he kept producing, and he did what they cared about, and up he went. And it's the same with the people around us. We see that and we care for them. Where it becomes tricky is what kind of care you give. Okay. So if you're a hard charger, we have our hard chargers, right? Who do great work. It's easy to care about somebody who's doing what we want them to do. That's easy.
It is.
It's super easy. Wow, that person's a rock star. Yep. Let's give them opportunities. Yeah. Let's give her opportunities. Let's suggest special duties. Let's suggest private orders. Their resume just gets bigger and bigger. Pretty soon, it's almost self-fulfilling. It just takes care of itself because they're just crushing it, right? Yeah. And they've been put into those places because we easily can care for them. Sometimes it's that person who's more in a shell, hasn't found their talent or their passion, and they're not excelling overtly because they can't find where they fit. And sometimes the caring is, I think I know where this person might fit. Mm-hmm. And taking them, they're not necessarily the high performer, and taking them, and I've seen this happen a lot. I've done this with a few, going, this person is worth putting effort into. I'm going to put them over here, and then they shine. Yeah. And all of a sudden now they're starting to be noticed because they're shining, and then they notice that, oh, my talent's here. They become passionate. You've heard the story. Somebody stumbles upon a first sergeant gig, you do additional duty first sergeant, and the next thing you know, they're a first sergeant. Yeah. They just found their passion, and they're great at it. We had one in my last group that did that. That one is a little more difficult. Mm-hmm. You have to widen your gaze as a leader and the people you care about to people who are not just like you, mm-hmm. doing the things that you do and are shining the way you shine. Those people are easy to take care of.
Yeah. I think you saying that, it makes perfect sense. And I like to think that I do that I find the people that aren't shining. But when I actually reflect on what I've been doing, I am guilty of picking.
Right, because that's a natural tendency. You have to force yourself to go, wait, who else is out there?
Yeah. Almost what you're saying, like people, when you're being successful and a good leader, people want to latch onto you. Mm-hmm. Like even though I outrank some of these people, I see how great they're doing. It's like, oh, I want to be a part of that growth and give them a chance. Yeah, which is something I should work on.
I think if our basic mindset, and I try to do this, the older I get and the more combat I was in, the harder this was to do. Your tendency is to not trust humans because you've seen the worst of humanity in combat and you've been burned a lot.
Yeah.
So, but the truth is that as a whole, people don't want to hurt other people. The propensity, people don't want bad things to happen to other people as a whole.
Yeah.
There are bad actors out there, but you take the population of the world, the vast, vast majority, truthfully, they don't want to hurt other people. Mm-hmm. And I think if you go into your interactions with people with that mindset first, like these people are probably good people. They don't want to hurt other people.
Yeah.
And be proven wrong on the ones that are that way. I think that's, I don't know. I think that's a good way to go about it rather than to be, I'm not saying be naive or unprepared for sticky situations. I'm just saying I don't like to assume the worst of people.
Yeah. That's really good. Something else you said earlier that I really liked is you were talking about selecting your friends, or your dad taught you to do that at a young age. And as a kid, it is really hard to decide, I don't want to hang out with that person, even if they're popular. But for you to be able to do that. But I've heard this many times before, and maybe you've heard it. You become like the 5 people you hang out the most with. Mm-hmm. You've heard that? Did you hear it as a kid?
I have. I didn't hear it as a kid, no.
But it's so true. Like when I look at groups of friends, I'm like, they're all like each other.
Right.
It's just very common. Or when I think about how do I behave and act, it is like the guys the closest guys I am with, closest friends I have.
Yeah.
So for you, being where you're at now, who would you think your top 5?
My top 5 friends?
I guess, yeah. Like who do you hang out with, associate yourself with, if you were selecting your top 5 or
I think,
I can make this question easier if that one's kind of a hard.
Backing it up, I can unravel this. Backing it up, I think it's a natural tendency, like you said, when you're a kid, it's most comfortable to hang around, gravitate toward those who are most like you. It's most important, though, as you age and you become more sophisticated and become an adult, that you see that the advantage is widening that base to people who improve you, right? Mm-hmm. So diversity in your friends, not just people who are like you. That's your comfort zone. So get out of your comfort zone and understand you're missing a lot of humans that are awesome out there if you don't.
Yeah.
And you learn that as you get into the wider world and start becoming a leader. For me, and I would say there's this period in your age, in your life, where that's you're the most open to every different kind of point of view, right? I don't know, let's say, I'm going to take a stab at it, 20 to 40.
Okay.
Then after 40, you start, the old crotchety old man thing starts to invade your brain. What I mean by that is the things that have worked the best for you in life start to be the core, and you become much more inflexible. So you've kind of figured out how to be a good parent and a good leader and all that stuff. And you have to fight that urge to hang your hat only on what has worked in the past and look for new stuff. That includes new people, because different people that you haven't experienced before have different ideas.
Yeah. Even
to this day, every day, that's the way. So you just have to be cognizant of it. And so there's still, I do believe there needs to be an underpinning commonality between you. For me, in the military, it's the military. That's the commonality. That's the underpinning thing, our military family. So it's easy for me to branch it off of that.
Yeah.
Rather than out in the civilian sector, it might be harder for you to find what that actual common underpinning that would glue that team together, right? It's very dangerous but comfortable to surround yourself by people who are exactly like you. You don't have to really do anything different.
Yeah.
but you also don't learn anything really.
Yeah, that is good. I recently read the book Tribes, and it's all about that, how you just got people stick together with just what they know, and they always just want to fit in.
Yep.
But I definitely have been branching out a little more. Like, I joined a book club, and it's interesting. Like, a couple years ago, I'd be like, yeah, that's for nerds. I'm not doing that. I like to read, but I'm not doing a book club. But now that I'm in a book club, it's really fun to, like, we all read it, talk about ideas like this, and share it with each other.
Right.
So yeah, just branching out is out of your comfort zone. But if you can do it, you just become a way better person.
You don't have to go 100% into everything out there, right? That's new, so that you can say you're a Renaissance person.
Yeah.
But you should not be afraid to try things, right? And dabble in things, because you're not gonna meld well with everything you try, but you're probably like a part of it.
Yeah.
I played a lot of sports, but there's only a few that I was really good at. But I wasn't terrible at the other ones I played. I just wasn't really good at them, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
What sports did you play?
My main sports were wrestling, football, that branched, and rugby.
Okay.
And then I kind of like leveled, and baseball. And I probably leveled out into rugby, and then the wrestling thing kind of changed into a MMA.
Yep. Oh, that's cool.
Did some amateur MMA for a short time.
In Nellis?
I did it at New York.
Okay.
And when I was at Fort Drum.
Okay. Yeah. That is cool. I know you have a busy schedule as we spoke about before we started this. So I'm going to try to make this about 6-7 more minutes.
Okay.
Get to the last few things. I know you didn't want to really change anything here yet because you're still settling in. But if there was something you could change in the Air Force right now, if you just had the power to do it, would you have anything?
Yeah, the list is long. They are changing it right now. If you asked me this question a couple years ago, the assignment process, TAC P, Aspect War actually was the first career field to go to the VML, the first enlisted career field to go to the VML process within Talent Marketplace. We were told at the time that won't work. Don't do it. It's going to fail. But luckily, our functional at AFPC was like, nope, we need to try this. This looks like similar to the way the officers do assignments. Yeah. There's a lot more transparency and flexibility and all this stuff. We did it. It worked. And then about 5 years after we did it, all those people that said, don't do it, it's not going to work, started going, well, we need to do this. And like there's 18 AFSCs that are going to the VML process. It's not great for every AFSC across the board. Because huge AFSCs like maintenance, it just wouldn't work out the way that VML works. But I think that's a good thing that's changing, that I wanted to see change, and it is going that way. The prior command chief, Hoagie, at AFPC made a lot of headway, and the new command chief's picking up the ball on that one.
That's good. And assignments are very important to people. A lot of people get out because they just can't live where they want.
I would like to see WAPS testing go away. Fully go away. I would like us to come up, and I'd like to see the evaluation system go to something other than bullets. I think a scorable, like a lot like corporate America uses, that has a scorable portion to it by your supervisors, and then a peer score.
Oh, a peer one too, huh?
Yeah. I think even for supervisors, there'd be a scorable by your leader, by your rater, scorable by your peers, and scorable by your subordinates. There'd be 3 sections for someone who is a rater, so that you can get a grade from the people you rate, a grade from the people around you, and a grade by your leader.
I really like that idea. Even if it's not something we used for promotion immediately, just getting that feedback and letting it be transparent.
And I'm kind of like, get rid of bullets, except because we get so focused on these fluffing up our bullets for boards and stuff. Maybe only your people who are performing and scoring at the level that you're going to push them for stratification or something like that. There's a field that opens up on the document if they score past a certain number, where you could put a narrative about their awesomeness that sets them apart. And if they, like if you are a must promote, a narrative box this big opens up. And if you're a promote now, a slightly bigger one opens up to fill more space up with, right? And not bullets, but narrative. That's just an idea. I don't know if it'll work, but it's an idea.
That's how a lot of, I think, better things come. They're just ideas that you throw out there and people fine tune them. So I actually really like that in something.
And the WAPS testing I do away with because I just don't think it gets us what we think it gets us. And I'd rather see it all performance-based. And if you need to do boards at large group levels, like staff sergeant, for instance, divvy out the stripes to the commanders. Say, you have this many stripes, kind of like how we do below the zone or the old step.
Yeah.
Here's your squadron X commander. Here are, based on your population and eligibility, here are 8 staff sergeant stripes for your, to promote. And you hold a local board under certain parameters, and you select your people to give the stripes to.
Yeah.
And if you don't have enough, if let's say you have 6 stripes and only 5 people meet the criteria according to your board, then give that other stripe back and it'll be given to somebody else.
That's really good. I've said this a few times on this podcast, but very often me and my friends here will drink and like try to solve all the Air Force problems and come up with ideas like that typically work. And we usually always result to like, we should just find one base to like beta test that. Like one base, they don't take WAPS tests. They're going to do it that way.
You know what? That's something the Air Force does now that they never used to do. And I'm glad you brought it up, because it's a lot of the times big Air Force, we don't get to see the stuff they're doing. Yeah. Right. That helps us. But they never used to test something out at a micro location. Now they're doing that. Like Nellis and a couple other bases were the test beds for the True North program, which they would now expand out to the wider Air Force. They tested usually uniform changes. Some of them, when they're up for debate, get tested out in micro areas. There was another, I forget what the system was that the meal card 2.0 that they bought off on. I don't know if you've heard about this program. So essentially, we have our meal card recipients, right? They go where? The DFAC. Meal card 2.0 is they can take their, much like a college campus, they could go to the CAC with this. By the way, this is an example. That's not what you could do right now. This is an example. They would be able to go to the CAC and use their meal card. They could go to the, if they're at the pub at the golf course, and Nellis is rolling that out.
That's cool. And you guys heard it here. Wolf Chief said you can go to the
CAC. No.
Slide your ID card.
No.
Just kidding. No, that is meal card 2.0. I like that idea. That is cool. And there's so many ideas people have, and there's so many good ones out there that are being missed, and there's ones out there that are terrible that are people are suggesting. So I get you can't implement them all. So one of the last things I want to ask you, I guess we'll move to the last one because I don't want to keep you here. What I'm going to skip over is just like, where do you see yourself in 6 years? I don't know if you've got that plan yet figured out, or if you live it 1 year at a time.
That's one thing I learned about. I had this misconception when I was a airman that assignments get easier when you get up higher and you get to say what you want to do, and that's what happens. Opposite. There is a way less control. I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen.
So you have no idea where you're going next?
Nope.
Okay.
Zero.
Okay, cool. All right. That's interesting. So the last question I'd like to ask is, you've been for 24 years?
23, yeah.
23.
Approaching 24.
Okay. And 23 years. So that's a lot of different leaders and experience from people you've met. Who would you call your top mentor? Who are they? And what is it special about that person?
Man, my
Diana.
No. My number one mentor was my father. He's passed away, but it was my father. He was my first mentor, but I had a coach, Rawlinson, my football coach in high school, was a mentor that I actually stayed in touch with until he passed away. He was still the high school football coach 2 years ago. That's a long time. He was old when I was there. One of the greatest mentors I ever had was Chief Mack. So I was in high school ROTC. He was the ROTC enlisted leader. He was a World War II vet, B-17 bomber, radio operator, old, super awesome, like your stereotypical chief, old chief, right? And man, did he care about us. That's where I learned. I had the first real exposure to an NCO. He put us first and foremost, and you felt it every day. Like that. We had a deck commander as well, the lieutenant colonel. He was cool, but we did not interact with him like we interacted with Chief Mack. That person was a tremendous mentor, and I talked to him for years after I graduated, He passed away long before I could ever make chief, so
Too bad.
he would have been proud of that, and my dad would have been proud of it too. In the Air Force, I've had a lot of great mentors. I had, lo and behold, one of my best mentors was a person who was demoted, made senior master sergeant, but ended up retiring as a tech sergeant. What happened with that demotion wasn't the mentoring, but along the way before that, he was a really good leader of people. He made a bad decision in the end, but he was a really good leader of people. I also had the first female squadron commander in TACP history. She was an air liaison officer of mine when I was at Fort Drum. She was a captain. Years go by. She goes back to her aircraft. Well, first of all, we deployed together to Afghanistan. She did a great job as a brigade ALO. And then she goes back to her airplane. Years go by, and I'm the ops superintendent at the ASOS in Colorado, and she picks up squadron command. We went through a lot together in that squadron command. Like, I was her sounding board, and I helped her with some extreme PTSD issues with some individuals, huge human problems and issues. And again, a human that cared about, she put as much care into those humans as she does into her children, right? Yeah. And things like that. And she was a huge mentor. Still to this day, again, I talk to her. Very intelligent and accomplished person, and taught me a lot about leading people. And then Colonel Gallemore is another one, and Colonel Kim, who was my commander when I was the Expeditionary Group Superintendent out in the desert. That was a person who really mentored me about do the right thing and defend it. Mm-hmm. Do the right thing and defend it. He wasn't afraid to not do the right thing, and he wasn't worried about making brigadier general. Yeah, he was worried about the people, and if that cost him a promotion, he didn't care. It was his job was the mission and the people, and he called it like it was. Like there was no churching it up as far as he was concerned, and I appreciated the transparency and the how forthright he was.
Yeah, what's something interesting is one of the first things you told me when I went to your office yesterday, so first time meeting you, and then what you said about Chief Mac, is that it? Yeah. Chief Mac, Colonel Kim, Colonel Gallemore, and what was the females?
Violet, Colonel Violet.
Colonel Violet. Something you said about all four of them as you were telling us about your favorite mentors is that they just cared about people, which is what you told me yesterday, what we started off with, and I guess that's what we're ending with is your mentors are people who just always cared about people. So it's interesting to see when we're talking about when you connect yourself to the 5 people you're most like, your 5 mentors are people that just cared about people. Yep. So it really does, I don't know, synchronize and link up in the end. I really do appreciate this. I told you I would keep this under an hour at 56 and a half. So whatever you have left to say, I'll let you get the final words.
I guess it's when we were talking about caring, I just, one last thing I want to drive home.
Sure.
I think we've all had a leader, different leaders where we could say it's so obvious when somebody is there just doing their job, right? Where they don't actually care. Mm-hmm. They don't relate to the people they're with. They don't care about them necessarily. They care about them as far as the function of going, I'm their boss and I need to care about them because they're under my purview. Yeah. But that really falls flat on people. Like if you want to lead people the right way, you need to care about them as humans and what happens to them. That doesn't mean coddling somebody that needs to be coddled. Or that isn't cutting the mustard. That means helping them to cut the mustard. If they can't in the military, sometimes caring for a person is finding them a new life on the outside. Or it might be finding them a new life in the military, not that job they're doing. That's all part of caring. And the best leaders that I have been around were able to make those distinctions. Caring is not coddling. I want to make that clear to people. There's a book out there called The Coddling of the American Mind. Yep. And it's one of the books I read because it does pertain to leadership because it's about interacting with people. And what you could pull out of that book, if you pull one line out of that book, is prepare the person for the road, not the road for the person. Yeah. Right? We don't try to change, that situation, we try to prepare the person to deal with that
Yep.
situation. That's how you should approach that. And there's other books out there that I like to read. Grossman wrote On Combat, On Killing, just about the psychology behind dealing with combat and how militaries have convinced people to kill other people, because it actually goes against your nature. You don't want to kill.
Yeah.
If you do want to kill people, just by naturally want to kill them, then you're probably have some deviant behavior going on in your head.
What book is that?
On Killing.
Okay.
The author is Grossman. And then a good book is Lessons from a Third Grade Dropout. I think that's by Rigsby, Dr. Rigsby. And it's mainly lessons he learned from his father, who was a third grade dropout. He's like, I had all the wisdom in the world, right? An amazing human being he was a third grade dropout, but he produced a PhD award-winning academic professor and speaker.
Yeah.
And his other son was a colonel in the Army and a judge, and is now a federal judge.
Yeah.
And he was a third grade dropout. I forgot what he did for a living, but it was like menial labor, right? And he applies how that was this third grade dropout taught him everything.
Figure something out.
Yeah, he figured it out, exactly. There's a lot of other things out there about leadership. There's so much out there about leadership. John Maxwell runs a lot of good books, right? And good seminars. Simon Sinek has a ton.
Yep. Find
Find Your Why is an excellent book. I mean, if you can tie why you do something to what you do, you're going to be passionate about it.
Yeah.
And you can tie your why to almost anything you do.
Yeah, so much I could say. I like to start with why. We read Calling of the American Mind was the first book we read in that book club. So I'm glad you brought up your favorite books, because that is something I like asking people on this show, and trying to rush through. I didn't get to it. So thank you for bringing that up and letting me. Chief Schaefer, really, I'm really glad you came on here. I know I asked you to do this yesterday and said I'm leaving in 5 days, and you're like, all right, I'll be there tomorrow. So I really appreciate it. I'm happy to have you. And I really hope you enjoy your short tour here. I know I sure did.
Well, I appreciate you having a passion to do this, because this is one way we can connect with people and get the word out about leading and caring for people. And you're doing this all on your own volition. You know, this is great.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a fun thing to do. Leaders on Leaders was a podcast he told me about. Is that it called? Leaderish. That was it. Leaders on Leaders is another leadership podcast. But for real, sir, thanks for being here, Chief, and Wolf Chief number 24.
Thank you for listening to Have a Tisue podcast, episode number 13, with Wolf Chief number 24, Chief Master Sergeant Schaefer. Caring about others is the most important value Chief Schaefer wants all of us to adopt. Much can be taken by his views on perspective and learning through experience. I truly appreciate him finding an hour block of his time to make this podcast happen before I left Korea. Have a Tisue podcast is now on Apple Podcasts. The current platforms this podcast on include YouTube, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Breaker, and Anchor.